Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Wednesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. All hail Bruce Timm and the DC Animated Universe. Nobody's contributed more to DC away from the comics than Bruce Timm. The DC Animated Universe is something that's had so many movies and so many television series. You know, Batman, the animated series, was the beginning. Superman, the animated series, two outstanding series. And then, I think, which is my favourite, is Batman, the Brave and the Bold, which for me is my absolute most unique, most favourite, part of the DC Animated Universe. What Bruce Timm has done and his team, and let's not forget all the wonderful people that Bruce has put together since Batman, the animated series. Andrea Romano, the voice coach, the voice director, and so many more people like Paul Dini. Lots of comic book people have been involved in this. We have so many debates on a daily basis, name dropping Snyder, Donner, Singer, Gunn, Nolan, etc., etc. But I don't hear enough people giving Bruce Timm the credit he deserves. As I say, nobody has done more for DC in terms of movies and television series in terms of DC away from the comics. And it's been amazing. Now, there are some accusations from some that some of the movies don't adapt the source material properly. I mean, there's a great example. The first Death of Superman movie was very short. It wasn't very comic book accurate. And I noticed that as soon as I saw it, but I still enjoyed it. But then Bruce and his team came back and kind of fixed that situation. They listen to the fans, something that doesn't happen very often in entertainment today. So we got this film in picture, which was a more faithful adaptation of the Death of Superman. And then they did a sequel called Reign of the Supermen. Two outstanding adaptations for this huge story of the death of Superman, and Superman lives basically. It's the death and the return of Superman. It's done so well. But boys and girls, these two films were just kind of the tip of the iceberg. As I say, if you challenge me, if you ask me what I prefer, if I prefer the DCAU, the DC Animated Universe, than anything in DC live action, I would have to plump for the DCAU. I think the achievements made by Bruce Timm and his teams since formulating the DC Animated Universe are beyond anything that's ever been accomplished in live action. But there's a serious question to be asked at this stage, because right now we've just had, a Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1 movie. There's going to be Part 2 coming soon, and Part 3. So what happens after that? I'm not sure if there's more plans for more DC animated movies, because James Gunn and Peter Safran have taken over DC Studios. They're going to do their own animated stuff. So does Bruce Timm continue to cook with this long-running DC Animated Universe, or is it over? If it is over, it's very sad, but what a legacy Bruce Timm gets to leave behind. And if he gets to continue, wow, the legacy continues. As I say, nobody has done more in contributions to DC movies and television. And I love so much of the live action DC movies. I love so much of the DC TV. It's been great. But I just feel the DCAU is just something special, something to be proud of. There's just so many great adaptations of comic books they've done. The Dark Knight Returns Part 1, Part 2 as well, and so many more. You know, as I say, if all these titles had been live action instead of animation, people would be hailing Bruce Timm a lot more. It was the great man's birthday the other day. I don't like to meet my heroes because you don't want to be disappointed, do you? But I'd love to shake Bruce Timm by the hand and just say thank you. Thank you for everything you've done in DC. I interact with so many DC fans from different corners of the fandom, but the fans I get on with the most are the fans of the DCAU, because there's a pure love for DC from those people. I'm not saying the other fans don't love DC, but it's less toxic. It's more about love. It's more about what they love rather than what they hate, and they're very constructive with their criticism about the DCAU if there's things they don't like about the DC animated universe. But it's amazing. Before the two Spider-Verse movies, you'd have to hail this as the biggest achievement. And Bruce and his teams were here first, doing great DC animated TV shows and great DC animated movies. It doesn't matter whether a movie's animated or live action, the achievements are still there. And they're just as huge as the achievements in DC live action TV and in films, as far as I'm concerned. Bruce Timm should have a fucking statue for what he's done for DC. The achievements are monumental. But what happens? Do we continue with this, or, is this the end now? Gunn and Safran have taken over DC Studios. I was very disappointed and dismayed that Bruce Timm wasn't approached, from what I know, to run DC Studios. I don't think there's anyone more qualified or with more experience to run DC Studios than Bruce Timm. Either he wasn't asked or he was asked and he rejected the offer. I suspect he was never asked, and for me, that's hugely disappointing, because this is the DC pioneer of DC moving pictures. The accomplishments, look, I could be here all day listing everything Bruce has done. He came in as a simple animator, he put it all together. He's part of he's a part of a great team. Let's not just say this is all Bruce Timm. I don't want to do down the great people that are part of the DC animated universe. And I'd say to anyone who's part of this animated universe, I buy all the animated Blu-rays, right, of the DCAU, and the behind the scenes stuff, the interviews. I always watch them, and they're always amazing, and they really make you proud to be a DC fan first and foremost, and also proud to be a fan of the DC animated universe. There's DC fans out there that probably never watched any of these films. I'm pointing over there because I've got them all piled up on my bed over there, and you can't see them. And I'm proud to own all these films, even the ones that maybe I don't appreciate as much as others. I think they're still major accomplishments. I mean, they did a Superman Red Sun, something that probably could make $1 billion if it was made in live action in DC Elseworlds. We'll probably never see it in our lifetimes. Bruce Timm and his teams of people have accomplished that, and it was fucking brilliant. Is it word for word to the graphic novels? Probably not. But what it is a great movie. And at least they attempted to do a Superman Red Sun movie. I think it's astronomical. I think it's brilliant. They've even done an Injustice movie. Again, it's very short. It cuts many aspects of kind of the story out. And some people didn't like it, but the idea is wholesome, to adapt a lot of comic book kind of titles into movies. As I say, we'll never, if you think about the movie titles that Bruce and his team of people have put together, we've never had that in live action. We're never going to have that in live action. And I think Bruce and his team deserve so much credit. We recently left Kevin Kilroy, the voice of Batman. For many people, Kevin Kilroy is Batman. And you know, Kevin wasn't my first Batman, but I think he's fucking amazing. And there's been teams of voice actors voicing Superman in the DCAU as well. And each one of them has been great. Now, the DC animated universe is interesting because not each film kind of is part of the same universe all the time. It's kind of different. You know, we had the Justice Society World War II. That was a brilliant movie starring Wonder Woman. Imagine that, instead of getting the god-awful Wonder Woman 84, if we got that movie instead. It's a brilliant movie. Forget the fact that it's fucking animated. Again, if this was released in live action, it would have made close to $1 billion. It's that good. It's brilliant. And the way they reveal Superman and the way they call him Shakespeare and you don't realise he's Clark Kent. It's brilliant. The achievements are all there. And as I say, there's no question for me. As much as I love Superman the movie, Man of Steel, etc., and all the other great stuff, the Dark Knight trilogy, all of it, right? A lot of it, at the very least, I love. But I don't think the achievements there are as high as they are in the animation. Some people will say, well, putting stuff in animation is easier than doing it in live action, and that's true. But they've adapted these comic book titles, and it's amazing. And it's great. We've got movies here for DC that we will never see in live action, as I said before, in our lifetime. Certainly in my lifetime. And I think that's very sad. But I also think it's fantastic that we've got these animated movies, and they're great, and they're beyond animated movies. They're proper music with great fucking scores. Let's be honest about it. And even the special features on the Blu-rays are a lot better than a lot of the stuff we get on the live action stuff as well. When you see what happened with Justice League, when you see what happened with Snyder, when you see what they did to Donna, you know, back in the 70s, you know, Bruce Timm has been able to have the freedom with his teams of, you know, scurries of people to create something utterly special. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm an expert on the DC animated universe, but I've got all the stuff. And what I haven't got on physical media, I've bought on digital. So special. Just really, really special. A major achievement. And Bruce Timm deserves every plaudit he gets. But we live in an environment today where some people just don't get the plaudits they deserve. Because, as I keep on saying, what Bruce has achieved is, it's unthinkable to me that it's even been achieved. When I watch Batman the animated series, I mean, I'm more of a Superman fan than a Batman fan, although I love Bats, and fucking hell, the versions of Batman in animated form are brilliant. It's like opening a fucking comic book and reading his dialogue. It's that fucking good. And Kilroy, wow. Kevin Kilroy, the late, great Kevin Kilroy. Mark Hamill's Joker. Wow. Who would have thought Mark Hamill could do Joker? But he's one of the best versions of Joker, even compared to live action. Everyone has their favourite, but Hamill comes pretty close to the best version of the Joker there is. And who would have thought that? Because there's more freedom when you're voicing characters. You can turn up in your sweats. You can move around however you want, but it's all about your voice. And you put everything into your voice, right? Voice acting, as I say, is very, very freeing. But, as I say, if you're a DC fan, if you're frustrated, you know, why haven't they ever adapted this in live action? Why haven't they done this in live action? Before discovering the DC animated universe, the DCAU, I used to say it myself, right? Superman the movie's great. You know, Man of Steel's great, but we've never had a Superman Red Sun. They've never done a Death of Superman. Yes, I know BVS and Zack Snyder's Justice League is kind of a version of the Death of Superman. And it's very creative, and it's very different, and it's not really anything like the Death of Superman comics. I enjoy what he tried to do there, but it isn't that story. For example, elements of BVS were, you know, kind of inspired by The Dark Knight Returns. And for me, the question was, and I've put this on this channel on my platforms before, and even when I'm speaking on social media, instead of being inspired by The Dark Knight Returns, why didn't you just make a Dark Knight Returns movie after Man of Steel? I mean, it's got all the elements. You've got Batman and you've got Superman that shows up in the movie as well. You wanted an older, grisly Batman. It's all there in that story. Why not just adapt that story? When you look at DC live action or even kind of the MCU, they always seem to avoid in, either adapting things faithfully or bothering to adapt titles from comics. And then even when you look at Superman's costumes, they've never taken a costume, accurately from the comics and said, right, we're taking this comic book design of the Superman costume and we're adapting it for film. I don't expect to see that in Superman Legacy either. Gunn's saying it's partly original and partly inspired from the comics, but which comic will it be inspired by? Very interesting. But, for me, whether you're a Superman fan, whether you're a Batman fan, Wonder Woman's been done justice in the DCAU. I haven't even mentioned the Justice League series or the Justice League Unlimited animated series they did. You see the Watchtower. You see the Hall of Justice. You see them, there's a mess hall and they're having food together and they're interacting. And some of them are romantically entangled. It's fucking brilliant. It's like a saga. We get to meet a version of Green Arrow, a very iconic version. There's lots of different things that Bruce Timm and his team have been able to accomplish in the DC animated universe. And the achievements go on and on and on. And I think somebody out there, and I've seen videos of people doing reviews of the TV shows and the movies, and they're great. I've seen videos on YouTube. I don't think there's enough DC fans talking about how monumental Bruce Timm's and his team's achievements with the DCAU are. And I think someone needed to do a video, especially it being Bruce Timm's birthday a couple of days ago. And I get great joy. When I'm watching these movies and these TV shows from the DC animated universe, I'm like, yes, this is DC, mate. I get excited. And I think to myself, I start imagine them in live action if we actually got this. And it gets me more excited for what James Gunn's doing as well. Because he has a great love for what Timm accomplished as well. And he's trying to take some elements of the animation and these types of animated films in his live action because fans have asked him. And he's responded yes. Because as I say, if you talk to DC fans generally, right, and people who understand the achievements of the DC animated universe, it's the greatest of achievements in terms of DC away from the comics. I would never ever say, oh, Bruce Timm did better with the DC animated universe than they've ever done with the comics. That would be disrespectful. The comics are the source material. Without DC Comics, without Detective Comics happening, there'd be no DC, there'd be no Superman, there'd be no Batman, there'd be no Plastic Man, who we've even seen in Batman, the Brave and the fucking Bold. Let's talk about the next Bruce Timm and team's DCAU's achievement, Batman, the Brave and the Bold, which I touched on briefly earlier. There's a fucking amazing episode with Red Tornado, who's trying to get in touch with his emotions. I think it's kind of a Christmas episode. It's an amazing episode. It's a fucking amazing episode that you should watch. Because the thing is with Batman, the Brave and the Bold, people just think it's light and funny, but it's not. There's a lot of touching moments in that animated series. It is brilliant. And if Gunn does anything as close to what Bruce Timm did with the animated series of Batman, the Brave and the Bold in the Brave and the Bold live action movie that him and DC Studios are developing, then we're going to have something special. Because I said before, we've got realistic versions of Batman via, well, I think Bruce Timm's Batman was more fantastical, but it was well away from the comics, right? What Matt Reeves is doing is full of realism. Again, what Christopher Nolan did, full of realism. But Batman, the Brave and the Bold. Brave and the Bold is something a bit more fantastical, a bit more fun, a bit more light-hearted, but it can be dark and it can be very, heartening and emotional in places as it has been in, this animated series. Again, another achievement from Bruce Timm and his team. And as I say, if you've never seen a DC Animated Universe episode of a TV series or a movie, you are missing out. I'm not saying you shouldn't call yourself a DC fan. That's insulting. I hate when people do that. Everyone loves what they love. Some people love the DC games. Some people love the series. Some people have only watched Smallville. Some people have only watched Superman Returns, or some people only like the DC Snyderverse. Whatever you like, you're a bona fide DC fan. Nobody has the right to tell you that you're not. What I'm saying is you're missing out, because this is proper DC. These animated TV shows, episodes, movies are made by people who love the comics. Proper geeks, proper nerds that get it. And as I said earlier, if these types of achievements were made in live action, we wouldn't hear the end of it. If Snyder had, made some of the movies in animation that Bruce Timm and his team have done, you wouldn't hear the end of it. Or if Donner had done it, or if Gunn had done it, we wouldn't hear the end of it. But Bruce Timm, and I know from the DC Animated Universe fans, Bruce Timm is treated like fucking royalty. Quite right too. But there's a lot of people, or know-nothings, that don't really understand the achievements of the DC Animated Universe. And it's important that people understand. Because as I say, now that we've got DC Studios, now that we've got Gunn and Safran, this could be the end. Part 3 of Crisis on Infinite Earths from the DCAU could be it. I don't know if there's any plans or anything else has been announced, because there's movies coming out. There's been movies coming out from the DCAU, for the past 20 years at least? Got to be. Maybe I've got my maths wrong there, but it's the longest running, right, comic book franchise in moving pictures, right? And it's animated, but it's basically, I think it's probably produced more content than even the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's the biggest thing. For me, it's the most successful thing. It's the most amazing thing. And it all really started with Batman, the animated series, which was really inspired by Tim Burton's first Batman movie. Even used the theme from Tim Burton's Batman movie. And it all kind of kicked off from there. And it's been amazing ever since. Now, like all long-running franchises, you could say, oh, Mick, but what about this movie they did? This wasn't good, or whatever. There's not a franchise that's been around, If you watched a long-running series like Dallas or anything, right, or kind of the CSI shows or the Law and Order shows, you're going to find, the great shows, great achievements, but you're going to find episodes and things that you didn't like. For example, I adore Smallville, but there's episodes I can't fucking stand, or I feel like they were rushed and there were mistakes there. That's what you get in a long-running situation, whether it's a TV show, whether it's the DCAU, and that's fine. There is never perfection. These people don't want to disappoint the fans. But you're working on something and it doesn't always come together. It's very, very difficult. But at the end of the day, the DCAU has been more great, iconic than bad. I think we can all admit that. Major achievement after achievement. And Bruce Timm deserves respect. A lot more respect than he's getting. My dream has always been for Bruce Timm to work on at least one live-action DC movie. Now, it's interesting, James Gunn has mentioned a lot of names, and I know he's mentioned his respect for the DCAU, but he hasn't mentioned the name Bruce Timm, which I find interesting. I'd love to see Bruce do an Elseworlds live-action movie. Nobody knows more about DC, working in DC stories today, than Bruce Timm. He's amazing. He really, really is. And the longevity of the man, the longevity of what he and his teams of people created in the DCAU is outstanding. It's something that, we can be proud of. It's something that won't ever be dated because it's animated. I mean, some of the movies will become more dated than others, of course, I get that. But, you know, as I say, the storytelling, and I think that's the thing we should really discuss as well. The storytelling in the DC animated universe really, really does work. They work hard on telling great stories, on adapting great stories the best way that they can. It's not easy to put this type of thing together, but to have all these movies that they've made, to have these, you know, these so many of these animated series as well, it really is an amazing achievement. And me personally, as a DC fan, I will never forget. Now, I'd love to know from people watching today, watching this video, what you think of Bruce Timm and the DC animated universe. Are you a fan of the DCAU? Have you ever seen it before? Is it not for you? I'd love to know. Would you like to see Bruce Timm working on some DC Elseworlds live action like I would? I think he would do a great job. Whether it's live action or animated, a great storyteller is a great storyteller. Bruce Timm's contribution to DC is bigger than I can ever do it justice. You know, there's no, you know, as I say, it's unbelievable. You look at someone like Kevin Feige, well, Bruce Timm has got the t-shirt. Bruce Timm's done it. And I think he's done it better than Feige. I genuinely believe that. You know, what he did in the first few phases of the MCU was great. Some people would say a lot of it was from other people whose names we don't know, and he took the credit. I don't know about that. But Bruce Timm was the original comic book, you know, kind of moving pictures supremo. He created a universe. Maybe his original plan and his original job wasn't to make a franchise. It all started with the Batman animated series. I'm sure they weren't planning to make movies and stuff, but as they became successful in what they were doing, they became bigger and bolder and more ambitious. And for people who know the DCAU know it's something incredibly special, and this is why Bruce Timm deserves all the plaudits and credit he deserves. Because Bruce Timm is just like you and me. The only difference is he's a nerd with a lot of talent. And as I say, what he's done is amazing. It really is. When you think about the longevity of the man, the longevity of the DCAU, you know, it's you can't run out of superlatives and you know, compliments to give the man. It really is an amazing situation, going back to the 90s and how it all started. And it just goes to show you that it can be done. People say people are not interested in DC. People don't relate to DC. You know, you can't make great DC films because the characters are gods or the characters are this. Bruce Timm has done it, and his teams of people, of course, in television and in film. As I said earlier, it doesn't matter that it's fucking animated. Don't discredit people because it's animated. Don't say, oh, it's only animated and it's not live action, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just as challenging to do animation as it is to live action. And as I said earlier, a film is a film, and a television show is a television show, whether it's animated or live action. The achievement is monumental. And I don't know if he's going to outlive me or I'm going to outlive him, but if I do outlive him, I'm never going to forget the man who gave me these iconic movies. As I say, if these were fucking live action, how amazing would that be if you went to the cinema to watch A Death of Superman and The Reign of Superman, right? Or Superman Red Sun, or an Injustice movie, right? It would be amazing, wouldn't it? Well, these animated movies and TV series are no less amazing. It's just as iconic, it's just as brilliant, and they're there. This is really the real successful DC universe, because there's never been a successful DC franchise. Nolan made a great trilogy, Donner made a great movie, Snyder did his thing, which I appreciate a great deal. You know, Todd Phillips' Joker Folie à Deux comes out this year. His contributions have been great as well. But no one's contributed as much to DC moving pictures than Bruce Timm. And the truth of the matter is, nobody ever will.